Hello everyone, this is Vesper the Evening Star, and I'll be your host today here on Vesper's Fanfiction Time. Today we will be reading Chapter 3 of Tunnel Vision by ROMII BIRDIE, so without further ado, let's jump right into it. All Might leaned back in his seat, extending both arms while Izuku watched from the sofa opposite him, his hands clasped around his steaming green tea. Young Midoriya, isn't it ironic? His mentor hummed, cyan blue irises shining. How justice itself is born from the bowels of evil. It echoed around him. The never-ending same phrase was repeated over and over. Born from the bowels of evil. Izuku could almost see All For One's teeth flash, how white his smile was as he crushed anybody who opposed him under his feet like they were nothing more than ants under his shoe. The monster was the definition of evil. There was that word again. Evil. Evil. It's not true. It's not true. He's lying. Izuku breathed out slowly, his entire frame completely numb as his brain processed what he'd just been told. Oh, nothing more to say? No clever remarks? The doctor looked slightly disappointed. He had been expecting Izuku to react more strongly to this revelation, rather than the shrinking violet that was in his place. A pity. Honestly, I'd hoped you inherited your father's sharp tongue. That would have made the next couple of hours far more interesting. The freckled teen scowled, his entire face screwing up in anger. Stop calling him that, he growled out, trying to steady his voice. I was always curious about Master's genetic code. Your genetic code. He pushed a clipboard across his desk. Although you were born quirkless, I wonder if your body has a factor that could potentially be useful to us. Izuku shrank under the gleeful gaze of the doctor, like he was nothing more than a piece of flesh to be dissected. The shorter man was certainly good at verbally dissecting him, knowing full well what to say in order to make the hero in training tick. I can imagine that it's like an itch inside your head, the doctor hummed, leaning forward to lightly tap Izuku's head while the teen shrinked away with an expression of disgust on his face. Unbearable, but a thrill at the same time. A desire, an instinct to want that specific quirk. Izuku's expression faltered, which the doctor noticed straight away. He couldn't help the twitch of glee emitting from his whiskery features. I'm correct, aren't I? Izuku shook his head. What else could he say? He wasn't going to blurt out that the doctor's eerie words rang familiar to him. No way in hell. Master always enjoyed assessing quirks before spiriting them away. The doctor held out his palm. He would often talk about the potential of even the uselessness of certain powers. He saw positivity despite the fierce limitations. Goosebumps ran up Izuku's bare arms. His quirk analysis. His own thoughts on how useful a quirk could be despite their weaknesses. He wanted to cry. Why did everything spewing out of this vile man's mouth feel so true? Why did it feel so normal to Izuku? Izuku's hands clenched into fists under the thick leather. Don't cry. Don't let him see that his words have got to you. Those thoughts and feelings are my own, Izuku ground out. The doctor smirked. We'll see. The boy's eyes remained fixed on the doctor as the man began collecting several pieces of equipment that clinked together. It sounded familiar. Sharp metal objects connecting together with the soon-to-be intention to be used on Izuku himself. He bit down hard on his bottom lip. That wasn't going to happen. With a muffled grunt, he twisted his right wrist around, the thick leather rubbing against his bare skin painfully. He felt his skin pale when he heard the sound of rubber gloves being slapped on the doctor's hands, and he began tugging harder. It hurts, but it's almost there. Now, let's begin. Come on, come on, come on. The doctor set the tray on the table before golfing. Oh, of course, I forgot the notes. Izuku glanced briefly at the sharp tools on display, watching carefully as the man spun around and began rummaging through his paperwork on the other table. One last chance. There! A grin spread across his face as the buckle loosened. Sliding his free hand, Izuku quickly snatched the closest tool to his bedside and immediately returned his arm back at his side. 3 seconds later, the doctor turned back around with the paper held in his left palm. His expression faltered at the partially freed teen on the bed. "What do you think you're—" Izuku sliced against the thick leather buckle pinning his torso, and the doctor let out a squawk of alarm. He soon realized his mistake the moment he launched himself at Izuku, hands outstretched to grab at the boy's arms. With one sharp movement, Izuku stabbed the scalpel into the doctor's shoulder with as much strength and power that he could muster, ignoring the howl of agony from the scientist as his free hand scrabbled around the restraints pinning his body down. "You little bastard!" the stoat man grunted, holding his wounded shoulder with his palm that was beginning to stain crimson. Blood stained his pristine white shirt and lab coat as his face scrunched up in utter fury and disbelief. The locks unclicked. The doctor made a weak attempt at grabbing for Izuku, only for the boy to aim a kick directly into the man's jaw, sending him sprawling into the table of sharp instruments. He may have been fighting quirkless, but he knew that his kicks would definitely be a way to stun the man. To Izuku's relief, the doctor's body crashed into the table holding the medical equipment, and both he, the tray, and the table clattered to the ground with a sickening thump, metal instruments spraying across the polished floor as the man let out a groan from the floor. Refusing to hang around for the villains back up to rear their ugly heads, Izuku took off, slamming the door loudly behind him. The doctor's screams of, "Get back here this instant!" rang out from the background as Izuku sprinted in the opposite direction of the medical room. "I got to get out of here," was the mental phrase Izuku repeated like a mantra as he stopped at every door in his line of sight. With every failed attempt to open it, he would move on to the next ahead. He prayed silently as he reached the next door, a set of old-looking wooden double doors that, to Izuku's utter delight, slid open with the barest push. "Oi! Who's down there?" Some unrecognizable voice yelled out from the distance, and Izuku squeaked in horror, immediately throwing open the door and shoving himself inside, only to nearly stumble down a large flight of barely lit stairs. Clinging to the rails overflowing with brown rust, Izuku let out a choking exhale while thanking the stars he hadn't ended up at the bottom of the narrow darkness below. Attempting to escape with a broken leg or arm would certainly hinder his escape. The teen slowly craned his neck down the winding rails that led to the lower grounds. He tried to force the down of the swell of hope emitting from his chest as he slowly began to take one step at a time. The strange sound of static filled his ears as he moved further down into the darker depths, his senses leading the way while he swiped his hand slowly against the old cracks of paint on the walls. Tilting his head in curiosity as the sound grew louder, to Izuku it almost sounded like fuzzy sounds of cable television. Izuku felt his jaw slacken in complete bafflement. What on earth was actually going on here? And for a matter of fact, where was here exactly? Gingerly taking hold of the old-looking door handle that had definitely seen better days, he yanked it towards him, freezing in horror with the ear-shattering groan that emitted. His heart pounded faster against his chest, and the air dropped several temperatures. Shit. Had anyone heard? What would he do if somebody did come running? If he had been rendered quirkless thanks to whatever the hell kind of drug they'd given him while he'd been unconscious? I'm dead. He sucked in air, his breathing shakily as he squeezed his eyes tightly until they hurt. 1, 2, 3. And then there was nothing. No sounds of hasty footsteps, no angry shouting, and thankfully no voice belonging to the absolute psychopath of a doctor. The only thing that could be heard was the background noise coming from around the corner where Izuku was standing, his hand still clasped around the handle of the door like his life depended on it. Focus, Izuku. Stealth is the key here. Izuku bit down hard on his bottom lip when a small echo of his own voice whispered behind him. He mentally chastised himself as he carefully crept into the entrance of one of the basement doors. That muttering habit of his was going to get him killed one day. Still recovering countless bodies from the debris and devastation caused by the villainous organization in Jaku City, many heroes have yet to comment. Some are still being searched for in the wreckage, along with civilians. It is a dark, sorrowful day for all of us. Izuku let out a squeak the second his ears picked up on the news report.
The television was out of his line of sight, but he could see flashes of bright light against the dull, broken lighting, and candles littered clumsily all over the rotting wood and crumbling brickwork. There was a quiet beeping sound from the background, along with an eerie hum that sent a shudder of dread throughout Izuku's entire frame. His body was completely rigid the very second he heard a low, yet stifled moan. His mind raced, and panic began to overwhelm him. There's somebody here. I know somebody's out there, a voice rasped, sounding pained. Every reasonable thought in Izuku's brain was washed away in a wave of utter terror. He knew that voice. Tomura Shigaraki. He took a step back. Who is it? Shigaraki called quietly. Dabi? Toga? No. He made a painful wheezing sound, and Izuku finally gathered up the nerve to move into Shigaraki's line of sight. His heavy-laid crimson eyes meant anxious emeralds before he finally let out a soft, "Oh, it's just you." Excuse you?" Izuku couldn't help but blink in utter surprise. He had expected a more dramatic reaction with a lot more screaming and swearing, seeing as this was the same person who had nearly choked the life out of him back at the Kisha Ward shopping center. "I guess you got out," Shigaraki whispered matter-of-factly, like it was a normal occurrence for his mortal enemy to be casually standing in the same room as him. While Tomura spoke, Izuku finally got a good look at the villain, and had forced himself to not shrink away from the morbid sight. Shigaraki was currently bedridden, confined to a large mattress with an oxygen mask to help him breathe, and various tubes and drips jabbed into his sickly, pale skin. His features were gaunt, and the gown he was wearing, although very similar to Izuku's own, flattened against his startling thin body, his ribcage showing through the fabric. "What happened?" was all that Izuku was able to grind out, keeping his voice level despite the traitorous flutter of fear hammering away in his chest. Tomura closed his eyes, chest rising and falling through rough paints of air that looked as if it was a mere struggle to breathe at this point. "Jaku took a lot out of me. Doc's gonna fix me up." "I wasn't asking about that." Izuku shook his head, curls bouncing, his features twisting into a frown. No matter, maybe it would be beneficial to listen to the villain. "So, how'd you get away?" Shigaraki looked amused. Izuku's frown hardened. That was a new one. "That's none of your business." Izuku's mouth spoke before his brain could catch up, and he immediately snapped his jaw shut with a loud click before realizing his mistake. "What are you doing? Don't antagonize him, idiot." "Ha!" Shigaraki let out a pained bark of laughter, settling his head further into his pillow. "I see that smart-ass mouth of yours is still functional, eh? Besides, it will be my business when I make a call for my men to drag you back to Yunko, won't it? After all," his gaze suddenly hardened, red eyes burning with intensity as Izuku held his gaze. "We're not done. Not by a long shot." "Shigaraki, maybe the first order of business should be to have that tongue cut out, Not like you'll need it." His grin widened. Izuku remained planted to the ground. The leader of villains, the mastermind of the Jaku raid, was right here. Even if Izuku pegged it right now, it wasn't like Tomura would be able to jump from his bed and sprint after him like an Olympic athlete. "Am I amusing you, brat?" Izuku blanched. Had he said that out loud? Tomura spat words out like venom, his glare intense and frightening as he slowly heaved himself into a sitting position. Izuku took a step back, knowing full well how devastating Tomura's decaying quirk could be. He'd seen the destruction with his own eyes at the raid. "You're absolutely fucked. I hope you know that. He won't kill you. Not yet. I won't give you all for one." His own voice faltered, emerald eyes catching a small glint from a nearby table close to Shigaraki's bed. "Is that—" Tomura followed his gaze, and his expression morphed. "Oh no, don't you fucking dare." Izuku's eyes widened. Like a literal miracle shining back at him was Shigaraki's cell phone. Izuku truly couldn't believe his luck. Despite Tomura's threats and shrieks of pure rage, Izuku made his move.
And that was all for Chapter 3 of Tunnel Vision. I hope y'all thoroughly enjoyed it. I know I did. And be expecting more to come because I have Wi-Fi and service again. So, have a good morning, good night, good afternoon, good evening. Have a good everything, folks. And I will see y'all next time. Mwah. Bye.